The waiting room of the hospital was busy, with people rushing in and out, but there was one unusual sight, a small, thin cat sitting quietly by the door. It was dirty, its fur tangled, but its eyes, they were full of something deeper, something that made everyone wonder what it was doing there. For days, the cat had been sitting there, refusing to leave. No one knew why. Nurse Clara was the first to notice it. She had always loved animals, and something about this cat touched her heart. Every day, she would pass by and see the cat sitting quietly, watching the door as if it was waiting for someone. She couldn't understand why it stayed there. People thought it might be lost, or maybe it was just hungry, but Clara felt like there was more to the story. She offered the cat food and water, but it didn't seem interested in eating. It just sat there, its eyes following the hallway with intense focus. Clara couldn't shake the feeling that this cat wasn't just looking for a meal, it was waiting for something important. But what? What was this small cat doing in a busy hospital, refusing to leave no matter what? And why did it seem so determined to stay? The answers would soon reveal a story of loyalty so deep that it would break the hearts of everyone who witnessed it. One evening, as the hospital's lights flickered in the dim hallway, Clara noticed something strange. The cat, usually calm, was pacing back and forth near the waiting room door. Its eyes were wide with panic, and its fur stood on end. Clara rushed over, her heart racing. The cat had always seemed so quiet and composed, but now it was acting as if something was terribly wrong. Clara knelt down and tried to calm it, but the cat didn't stop pacing. It was as if it was looking for someone or something. That's when Clara noticed it. The door to the emergency room had opened for a brief moment, and the cat darted toward it with a speed Clara had never seen before. In that moment, a cold chill ran down Clara's spine. Was there someone inside the room the cat was waiting for? She had no idea, but she followed the cat, her mind racing. Suddenly, the hospital staff rushed past them, and Clara overheard one of them speaking urgently on the phone. "We lost him," the voice said. "He didn't make it." The words hit Clara like a slap. She turned to look at the cat, whose frantic pacing had stopped. The cat was now staring at the emergency room door, still as a statue. Clara realized, with a sinking feeling, that the cat had been waiting for someone who might never come out of that room. A deep sorrow seemed to hang in the air as Clara slowly made her way back to the cat. She crouched down, reaching out her hand to comfort it, but the cat didn't respond. It didn't need her comfort. It was mourning just like the rest of them. What had happened to the cat's human? And why hadn't the cat left? The bond between them was stronger than anyone could imagine, and it was about to be tested in ways Clara couldn't have prepared for. The days grew longer, and the hospital's waiting room became the cat's second home. Each time Clara arrived, she found the cat curled up on the same worn-out chair, its eyes searching the room for something, someone. There was a quiet sadness in its gaze, an unspoken longing that mirrored Clara's own feelings. The cat, whom Clara had started calling Whiskers, was growing weaker with each passing day. She noticed it was eating less, barely touching the food she brought. The once vibrant cat seemed to be fading, and Clara's heart grew heavier with worry. She knew that the longer Whiskers stayed in the waiting room, the more vulnerable it became. The hospital environment wasn't meant to be a home, and Clara could see how the constant movement of strangers and the sterile, cold atmosphere drained the animal's energy. But there was something more. One evening, as Clara sat beside Whiskers, she noticed the cat trembling faintly. It was shaking, not from the cold, but from something deeper: fear, loneliness, or perhaps the pain of waiting. The animal's body was thinner now, and its once lustrous coat was beginning to lose its sheen. Clara's mind raced with worry. She had tried everything she could think of to comfort the cat, but it remained distant, as if something invisible was keeping it tethered to the hospital. Meanwhile, Clara's own life seemed to slip through her fingers. Her search for Whiskers' owner had hit a dead end. Every phone call and every message to animal shelters returned with the same answer: no one had come forward. Clara couldn't stop thinking about the cat's owner. Who were they? Why hadn't they come to claim their beloved pet? Was something wrong? As Clara spent more time with Whiskers, She couldn't shake the feeling that the cat was waiting for something, someone. But what if that someone never came? What if Whiskers was destined to remain lost, wandering the sterile halls of the hospital, waiting for a reunion that might never happen? Clara's frustration grew. She felt helpless, trapped in a situation where the only thing she could do was watch the cat's slow decline. The more she tried to bring comfort to the animal, the more she felt the weight of her own helplessness. Every visit, every attempt to ease Whiskers' pain, only reminded Clara of how little she could do. She wanted to take Whiskers home, give it a warm bed, and let it feel safe again. But she couldn't. She had no way of knowing who the cat truly belonged to. One night, as Clara sat beside Whiskers, her phone buzzed. It was a message from a woman named Olivia, who had seen Clara's search for the cat's owner online. Olivia was a volunteer at a local animal shelter and had seen a similar-looking cat in one of their recent rescues. The message gave Clara a spark of hope she hadn't felt in days. But the hope was tinged with fear. What if this wasn't the same cat? What if the person who had posted the message was just another false lead? With trembling hands, Clara sent a reply. She asked Olivia to send a photo of the cat from the shelter, praying that it would be Whiskers. But as she waited, Clara's mind raced. What if the real owner was already out there, searching for their cat, just as Clara had been? Would they come? Would they even recognize the cat after so much time apart? As the hours passed, Clara couldn't shake the growing sense of urgency. Every moment felt like a race against time, as if Whiskers' fate hung in the balance. The hospital room had become a cage for both Clara and the cat, a place where hopes and fears intertwined, and the future remained uncertain. The day of reckoning arrived. Clara walked into the hospital, her heart heavy with dread, but also a spark of hope. The photo Olivia had sent her showed a familiar face. It was Whiskers. It was the same cat. For the first time in days, Clara felt a surge of relief, but it was fleeting. The fear that had been building inside her since the moment she found Whiskers wouldn't go away. The longer the cat stayed at the hospital, the weaker it became. Clara rushed to the waiting room, where Whiskers had been resting, but to her horror, the cat was nowhere in sight. Her breath caught in her throat. Her stomach twisted into a knot. The waiting room, once filled with the soft sounds of Whiskers' breathing, was now eerily quiet. Panic surged through Clara. She sprinted down the hospital corridors, asking every nurse and doctor she passed if they had seen the cat. No one had. Her mind raced with terrifying possibilities. Had Whiskers wandered off in search of something familiar? Was the cat injured? Was it too late? Clara's eyes darted across the hospital, searching for any sign of Whiskers, but her hopes were dwindling with every second. She felt as if time itself was slipping through her fingers. The weight of helplessness pressed down on her, and the thought of losing Whiskers now, just when she was so close, was almost unbearable. Suddenly, as Clara turned a corner near the back of the hospital, she heard the faintest of meows. She froze, her heart pounding in her chest. The sound was weak, fragile, but unmistakable. Clara followed the sound, her breath quickening, until she found Whiskers, huddled in a small, dark corner of the hospital's storage room. The cat was trembling, its small body shivering uncontrollably. It looked up at Clara with wide, fearful eyes. It was so thin, and there were signs of strain on its face, its fur matted and unkempt. It was as if the cat had given up on waiting, searching for something to hold on to, something familiar. Clara knelt down beside the cat, her hands trembling as she gently stroked its fur. "I'm here, Whiskers. I'm here," she whispered, her voice cracking. The cat slowly lifted its head, its eyes meeting hers, filled with a mix of fear and longing. The emotional weight of the moment hit Clara like a tidal wave. It wasn't just about finding the cat anymore, it was about saving it, offering it a chance at life, and a chance at love. But Whiskers was weak, too weak to stand, too weak to even walk back to the waiting room. Clara's heart broke as she realized the gravity of the situation. She had only moments to act. There was no time to waste. She scooped the fragile cat into her arms, holding it close to her chest. "You're not alone anymore," Clara whispered, her voice barely audible. She sprinted down the corridor, her legs trembling with the weight of Whiskers in her arms, praying that they both made it out of the hospital in time. The tension was suffocating. Clara's mind raced. If she didn't get Whiskers the medical attention it needed, the cat might not survive. The thought of losing Whiskers now, after all this time, after all the hope and pain, was more than Clara could bear. Clara rushed through the hospital's doors, her breath shallow and quick, heart pounding in her chest. With Whiskers held tightly in her arms, every step felt like an eternity. She could feel the cat's fragile heartbeat against her own, and she prayed silently that they could make it in time. As she burst into the emergency room, the staff immediately sprang into action. They gently took Whiskers from Clara, their practiced hands moving quickly, connecting IVs, administering fluids, and checking vital signs. Clara stood at the side, her hands clasped together in anxious prayer as the medical team worked tirelessly. Minutes seemed to stretch into hours, but finally, a nurse turned to Clara with a warm smile. "The cat's going to be okay. We've stabilized it. It just needs some rest and care, but it's strong. You did the right thing bringing it in." Tears welled up in Clara's eyes as a wave of relief washed over her. She had feared the worst, but now she could see a glimmer of hope. Whiskers was going to be all right. As Clara sat by Whiskers' side, watching the cat's steady breaths, a nurse walked into the room, holding a folder in her hand. She looked at Clara and spoke softly. "There's something you should know." Clara looked up, puzzled. "What is it?" The nurse hesitated for a moment before continuing. "Whiskers, this cat, was brought here a few days ago by a man. He had a very special bond with her." But Clara's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" The nurse paused, then explained. The man who brought her in was her owner, Mr. James. He had been desperately trying to get her treated for a heart condition. But just as he was about to have her treated, he collapsed. It turned out that he had been battling a terminal illness for months. Whiskers waited here for him every single day, sitting in the waiting room, hoping he would walk back through those doors. When he passed away, the staff here noticed her sitting in the same spot, never leaving. She waited, day after day, not knowing what had happened to him. Clara's eyes welled up with tears. The truth hit her hard. Whiskers hadn't been just waiting for anyone. She had been waiting for the person who had cared for her all her life, the one she had bonded with. And when he never returned, Whiskers stayed behind, in the place where she last saw him, hoping for a reunion that would never come. Clara gently reached out to stroke the cat's fur, her heart aching. "You were waiting for him, weren't you?" she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "You didn't give up on him." At that moment, Clara understood. Whiskers had not just wandered into the hospital by chance. She had been waiting, holding on to the memory of the person who had loved her, even in his absence. The weight of the truth hung heavily in the air, but Clara felt a new sense of connection with the cat. Whiskers wasn't just any stray waiting to be rescued. She had been waiting for closure, for peace, and now, Clara was determined to give it to her. As the days passed, Clara made sure Whiskers was never alone. She stayed by her side, giving her all the love and care the cat had missed. Whiskers slowly began to trust her, her anxious eyes softening with every passing day. Clara watched as the cat's spirit healed, and their bond grew stronger. One evening, as Clara sat on the couch, Whiskers curled up in her lap, purring happily. It was a moment of peace. Whiskers had finally found a place where she belonged. The lonely days in the hospital waiting room seemed like a distant memory. Now, she was loved, safe, and never alone. Clara realized that their meeting was no accident. Whiskers had come to her, broken and searching for love, and Clara had given her a home. Together, they found happiness. As Clara smiled down at Whiskers, she whispered, "You found your home, and so have I." Animals like Whiskers need our love and care. Please consider adopting, supporting shelters, or donating to help animals find their forever homes. Let's give them the second chance they deserve. And don't forget to subscribe for more heartwarming stories and ways you can make a difference.